Hey guys, and welcome back to the next video in my series on Personal Finance 101. Today I'm going to start with a story. Imagine you go on an overseas holiday. You go to see Oktoberfest in Germany. You're in Munich, you're having a great time, and you realize after a couple days of drinking and enjoying the festival, enjoying the time, that you're actually run out of money. But the bright side is that you remember before you left on your trip, you put some money aside in a separate bank account that is just enough to pay for a flight home. And so you think, well, my trip isn't supposed to be over, but I've run out of money, I just have to go home. This is an absolute need. So you take that money out, you buy your plane ticket, and you arrive home safely. And that's a little bit like an emergency fund. An emergency fund is exactly like that, but making sure you can safely get home in your day-to-day life in terms of your finances. So what is an emergency fund? Well, there are kind of two questions that might come up. Number one, what is an emergency? And number two, how much do I need? And as we answer the first question, you'll come to see what the answer to the second question is. So the first question is, what is an emergency? What counts as an emergency? And so if you think about my story from earlier, drinking more beer is not an emergency. Buying another night's hotel in Munich is not an emergency. Going out doing some souvenir shopping is not an emergency. It's not a basic need. And so for you, you're going to have to think about, what are my basic needs and how do they compare to my wants? So a basic need is you need to eat, you need to drink water, you need somewhere to live, and you need to be able to get around for your most basic and critical transport. So that could be getting yourself to work, getting your kids to school, being able to get to a hospital or your GP or something like that. So you need to make sure that all of those things can continue to happen no matter what financial storms hit you. And so the way to do this is to put aside a set of money, an amount of money, that means if something comes up, and there are about two situations that could happen, that you can continue to fulfill those basic needs. So the two things that might count as an emergency is, one, you lose your source of income. And so for an amount of time, you need just enough money to get you through to cover your basic needs so you can continue to live your basic life. And number two, some unexpected big expense comes up that is also a basic need that you just absolutely have to pay. And maybe you could have planned for this, maybe you could have saved for it, but it's too late. You just have to pay it. So that kind of brings us to our second question, which is, how much do you need? And really, the answer to this question depends on you. It depends on how much do you feel like you need to make sure you can sleep well at night. You may also be thinking, well, my parents would give me money, or my family, or my friends, and that may be the case. They may be very generous, but you may want to think through, do I want to be independent? Do I want to be self-reliant? Do I want to avoid being a burden to those around me and actually be self-sufficient and responsible with my finances? And so if that's you, if you've come to that realization, you really want to think about how much money would make me be able to sleep well at night and feel as though I could cover my basic needs long enough to either restore my income or have enough there that could cover some big emergency expense. Maybe you need to have enough to buy a new car, or you need to have enough at least for the deposit on the car. One other question you might have is, why do I even need this money sitting aside? Can't I just go get a loan from the bank or put it on the credit card, or maybe you even have a revolving mortgage that you can dip into to cover those kind of expenses? And while it's true, those things are there, and sometimes it may be your only option, the reality is that you have to pay it back, and you have to pay it back twice, principal and interest. So really the emergency fund is there to protect you, to allow you to continue to fill your basic needs and avoid you paying for it twice. It means you don't have to go into debt when those situations arise, and it means you can keep on sailing even when there is a storm that comes up. It means that you can get safely home no matter what happens. One other thing that I just want to mention before we close is an emergency fund is kind of like self-insurance. You're like paying the excess up front, knowing that something will probably happen eventually. Now, this is not the only type of insurance you can get. There are other types of insurance, and in fact, I would highly recommend you look into what kind of insurance might be appropriate for you and your family. Maybe you need life insurance to make sure that if you die, your family is looked after, or income protection insurance, or maybe you're a professional and you need indemnity insurance. Your bank would probably enforce that you get house insurance or contents insurance, or any other dependence on your life, any other major risks that you couldn't possibly save enough money for, that you need to protect against, that is a reasonable risk that could happen. You want to make sure you go and seek professional advice to get insurance for those things. But starting with an emergency fund of something like 3 months worth of your basic expenses, and that's something you're going to have to go away and calculate. You should hopefully know that by now if you've watched our previous episodes and put those action points into action. But yeah, 3 months is a common recommendation. If your income is less secure, more variable, you may want 6 months or even a year's worth of savings. But remember, this is just for your absolute basic needs, only for emergencies. And so the biggest takeaway from this video is to go and think about what are your needs versus your wants, and really wrestle with that and understand for yourself what that means in dollar figures. So yeah, thanks so much for watching, and I hope this has been helpful. I'll see you in the next one.